Welcome back, creators. So, I want to propose a new idea. Over the years, Sonic stories have been very divisive. Most would say through the past 10 years, they sort of suffered in a lot of ways. Not completely, not to dispel all the good things about that era, but compared to what it is, what Sonic really is at the core, it was definitely a step down from what we were getting in the early 2000s, and even in the classic titles, which had much simpler stories, but still, there seemed to be more of an understanding of what Sonic is. And now it seems we're just getting back to that with games like Frontiers, having a new world for you to explore, whether that be islands or new zones, new dimensions, new parts of the world that we've never seen before, whatever it may be. The exploration and what that does to the story and what kind of story can exploring a new environment tell. You know, Frontiers did that really well. It gave us new lore. Whatever you think of that lore, you know, that's a separate topic, but I think exploring the world and getting to know the world more through that experience and building on the lore that already exists. And I think it's a great motivator when we're playing these games to explore, you know, because we want to know more. We want to know about what's going on. I think that's a very important aspect of the franchise, and I don't think it should go away. And that's why I really like this open zone style, because I think that is a piece of it. Having a story that must be uncovered, must be investigated. I think there is something to that. The Sonic world is so varied, and it's a part of the reason why I love it so much. I'm not sure if I ever mentioned this before, but the Sonic world itself is so interesting, infinitely interesting to me. Just the world that Sonic and the humans live on is fascinating because it's not quite like Earth. Like, it has the main points, like it's based heavily on Earth, but the planet is so much more dense. There's all these other islands. There is a lot more to unpack, and still to this day unexplored islands like Starfall Islands and whatnot. And I think that that's such a fascinating idea for a world. You combine the fantastical with the realism, the groundedness, you know, you bring those two things together and you get a really interesting and fascinating world that is really fun to explore. So the more open zone stuff we get, I'm all there for that. I think it's just going to allow us to connect more with Sonic's world itself. Even if we're in a completely new environment, we're still learning new things about the world we've been playing in this entire time. So where am I going with this? Well, the stories themselves still need a little bit of work, and I'm mostly talking about character. Now, before you go to the comments and tell me about how Frontiers did a really good job with character, I agree with you. I'm just saying that I think it could be better. And I'm not trying to be exhausting like this, like, you know, no matter what they do, it could be better. You know, that's not what I'm saying. I think, and I include the Archie comics in this discussion as well, not just IDW, but I think the kind of stories they tell in the comics were just sort of meant for the games. You know, even if you look at IDW, something more recent, like the Metal Virus art, Scrapnik Island, I would much rather see those stories in a game. They're the kind of stories people want to see. They're interesting, you know, they add a little bit of something new to an old idea, you know, especially with Scrapnik Island. It's a very fresh take on Mecha Sonic, and sort of what an interesting way to bring him into the series. These are huge missed opportunities. I think Mecha Sonic #1 is a huge villain missed opportunity. I don't know why they're so afraid to touch that. I don't even know if it's fear. I don't know what it is that keeps them away from it, but the comics can touch it. And see, this is the thing that's frustrating, is that why can the comics do things that the games can't? Especially nowadays, now that they're connected more directly, it's like they don't feel that connected. Like the Forces comic that came out, okay, yeah, that's connected, right? But that was like right at the beginning of IDW. And it's like, why can't we play a game with the Metal Virus? Why can't we play a game with Scrapnik Island? I mean, those would do really well with an open zone style gameplay. And I think, honestly, the comics, from what I've heard, they're doing good, but they're not doing as good as they used to back in the Archie days. And this is just a changing of the time. It's not really IDW's fault. I mean, some people would tell you otherwise, that like, oh, the writers are not as good as they used to be, most likely because Ian Flynn has gone over to the games. But I don't think they're giving Ian Flynn the freedom he really needs and deserves to really be able to do something amazing, something that makes us all go, oh my god, like finally, such a good and intricate, story-rich, character-rich experience that we've been waiting to see in a game. Like finally, like I don't think we've had that moment yet. When it comes to story, I guess I'm just sort of exhausted after all these years, the longest running comic series of all time with the Archie comics, to not take some inspiration or some part of that story and put it in. Same with IDW. Like, I thought the whole point of connecting them was that we were going to start seeing elements of these stories or the entire story done in a video game form, but that's just not the case, and they're not even referenced. So now I'm left wondering, what's the point of even connecting the comics? You know, do something different with the comics then if they're not going to be connected to the games, because the way these IDW comics are being done is like they're being pitched for a video game. I see this opportunity and I'm like, how are we not taking advantage of this? And I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels this way. And look, I haven't read all of IDW, but I've heard really good things about it. I know it's not like the Archie. I understand like both have their ups and downs in a lot of different areas, but I just think it's such a missed opportunity, you know, and they're not utilizing the comic characters like they said they would. It's like, really? After all that fighting with those legal battles and now they have a new comic series and they have all the rights and they just let them sit there collecting dust. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It's like you have these beautiful characters and you can give them more character once they come into 3D, once they are interacting with the main cast and the cutscenes, once you give them an important role in the story. If they just exist in the comics, of course you're not going to look at that and be like, oh yeah, that's a character that needs to be one of the next main characters in the next game. When they brought in Silver, he was a pivotal character for that storyline. But the opposite effect happened is that, oh, well, now that he's done with that storyline, oh, I guess that's it. I guess we don't really need Silver anymore. It's like, wrong. You wrote him for one purpose and then you've let him run loose and then just have them throw him in whatever, like whatever kart racer is coming out. You know, it's stupid. These characters are so underutilized. Shadow deserves his own set of games, along with Silver and Blaze for that matter. All the speed characters, pretty much. SPO, throw him in there too. They all deserve the spotlight. I still would really like to see Team Chaotix come back in some form, whether they be NPCs that you can find in the next open zone Sonic game, like in the world. That is the kind of stuff I'm talking about, just like establishing elements, like have the Team Chaotix have a headquarters that you can go and visit and you can do missions for them, like side missions. This is the kind of stuff we need. Have like a DLC mission where you get to play as the Chaotix. Like, I don't know. We're still scratching just barely the surface. And you know what the whole Paramount thing has showed me? People really like the other characters that aren't Sonic. And so when Sega and Sonic Team are so just obsessed with just making games about this one character that they've been doing for like over 30 years, it's like, this is proof. People almost love the other characters more, you know? And it's not just me who feels this way, but it's just like this longing for seeing them in the spotlight again. It's why people love Adventure, because they all equally get their own storyline and they all come together at the end and it's this amazing, you know, event. Heroes is the same thing, you know. I think it's just such a missed opportunity to not take advantage of this massive cast of characters that you're rebuilding after losing a lot of them from Archie. You're rebuilding them again, just not to use them again just doesn't make any sense. And so off the character topic and just going back purely to just story, which I know those things go hand in hand, but I'm just getting exhausted talking about the misuse of characters because it's been so long. I don't want to seem ungrateful because we are in the year of Shadow, and I do want to just reiterate, we are on a better path here. But what I'm hoping is that all of these things are brought into the future projects. Why do the comics, the things that get the least amount of attention, get the best stories? It just doesn't make any sense, you know? Those need to be in the game. In all the games moving forward, I think that is really what I wanted to get across in this video, is that while I do appreciate the direction with the open zone formula and what that does for storytelling, I'd like to see what they can do pushing the boundaries even further, making the cutscenes feel more cinematic, and making the character dialogue feel more like it does in the comics, which always feels more natural. The continuity of how the characters interact with each other seems more stable and together. You know, you don't have one story where Sonic is more stoic and then all of a sudden another story where he's running around, joking around like nothing's going on. The comics always felt more consistent with the characters in that way, and I think that comic mentality of the way they write those stories and write those characters needs to be applied to the games, especially. Making the characters have a bigger role, again, a huge issue with Forces was just the way they were just sort of there, and that was their one opportunity while Sonic is gone, for the characters to step up and take a stand and have more importance to the story. I mean, they even came together as freedom fighters, like we've seen in the comics, like they're purposefully nodding to the comics without fully committing to what made the Freedom Fighters so good. To have that teamwork on display, to show these characters out in the field doing good things, you know, and while also having very interesting character interactions, you know. Wow, I mean, the more you think about it, Forces was just so under budget for what it was trying to be, you know, what it needed to be. To finally see these characters completely in control of their destiny, to be able to work together and to save their friend, and like, it's just a bunch of cutscenes of them standing around a table acting completely hopeless. It's just so sad. If they were to tell that story of Sonic Forces in the early 2000s, it would be completely different, because we got it in the era that we got it, with writers that didn't understand what makes Sonic so great. This is exactly why they brought in Ian Flynn, I would assume. While Frontiers is great, I'm still not totally like seeing this future where all the characters feel more consistent and connected, and the stories feel more like chapters and less like Elseworld stories, where it's like, did the moon blow up in SA2? Well, the moon looks fine in every other game. Every game just feels like this weird Elseworld story, when in reality it shouldn't. They should feel connected. You shouldn't need the previous story to like explain the new one, but they should feel consistently connected, and the characters should feel the same way. This franchise, like, you know, just didn't treat any of the characters with any level of respect or care, and so that's why everyone is so on edge nowadays. At least everyone who went through that time and was so let down by that game. I think it's just, we're ready for something really amazing, and that's why you see so many fans like comparing Shadow Generations to Forces, and you know, saying, oh my god, they're going backwards. Like, we just have to wait and see. We're just now starting to head in the right direction, and this is a very much so a smaller project compared to what's gonna come in the future with like a potential Frontiers sequel and more. So I don't want this video to get too long here, but I really appreciate you guys listening through. If you made it all the way through, that's amazing. My next episode of the Sonic animated series is coming along pretty nicely. Been working really hard on it. I've also been sick. I don't know if you guys can tell from my voice, but it's still not 100% back, so still working on recovering, but also just working really hard on the animation, the voice acting, and the editing that goes into this. And just 2 more episodes and Cybernetics will be over and the movie will be out, and all that will be done around the end of the year, and so super exciting. I'm ecstatic about it. Really excited for you guys to see this next episode. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video, creators. Peace out.